Bill C-16 purported to do nothing but extend human rights provisions to an excluded group, let's say, to the transgender and non-gender binary types. And that was the federal legislation. It also made it a hate crime to discriminate or harass, essentially. So now then the question is, well, what exactly do you mean by discriminate or harass? And why exactly is that a hate crime under the criminal code? Well, there was an answer to that. The answer was, well, this bill will be interpreted in light of the policies generated by the Ontario Human Rights Commission, very large set of policies. Now, the Ontario Human Rights Commission is a radically leftist organization. I think it's the most dangerous organization in Canada, although you could debate that. And they set all sorts of policies about how this legislation was going to be interpreted, and the federal government linked to their website to state that Bill C-16 would be interpreted in light of those guidelines. So I went and read all the policies. Well, one of the policies was that if you didn't use the preferred pronouns of a given group, that you could be charged essentially with a hate crime. And I thought, no,
Which
that's
given group is that? You're talking about transgender people.
Yeah, and so there's all these pronouns that have come up. There's 70 different sets of pronouns approximately to hypothetically describe people who don't fit anywhere on the gender spectrum, which is also something that I don't really understand. I don't understand that conceptually.
We'll come to that. But I just want to hear the story of this bill first.
Okay, so now a person is compelled under Canadian law to use the pronoun of another individual's choice on pain of law. And I thought, well, no, that's not acceptable. It's one thing to put limits on what a person can't say, like say with hate speech laws, which I also don't agree with, by the way, but that's a different argument. I think it's a narrower argument. But to compel me to use a certain content when I'm formulating my thoughts or my actions under threat of legislative action, I thought, no, what's happened there is the government has introduced compelled speech legislation into the private sphere. It's never happened in the history of English common law. And so I said, there's no way I'm abiding by that. I don't care what your damn rationale is. We're compassionate. It's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're playing this radical collectivist left-wing game. You're trying to gain linguistic supremacy in the area of public discourse. You're doing that using compassion as a guise, and you're pulling the wool over people's eyes. And you're not going to do it with me.
If I was sitting here in front of you as a transgendered male to female or female to male, and we began the conversation. At the beginning of the conversation, you stumbled and called me he or she, and I was perhaps identifying the other way around. And then if I'd said to you, please, I'd rather go by she, how would you respond to that on a personal level? How would you?
Well, it would depend on the situation, but the way I have responded to that, because I've had a number of conversations with transgendered individuals, is that I use whatever pronoun seems to go along with the persona that they're projecting publicly. It's the simplest thing to do. Now, if we were,
so you would respect their choice on an individual level.
Yeah. But with a more contentious pronouns, je and je, and that sort of thing, that's a whole different issue. Because the question there is, well, exactly what is it that you're doing when you're asking me to use those words? Like, are you compelling me to play your particular ideological game, or is this actually a matter of some personal identity that's important to you? And those things are not obvious. And so in a situation like that, the first thing I'd have to do is to try to figure out just exactly what was going on in the situation, and that's not simple. And so there would be no foregone conclusion that I would address you by the pronouns of your choice. And the first thing I'd want to find out is that just a narcissistic power play? Because that's actually the most likely outcome.